In this video, I'm going to be building a massive safari in LEGO, featuring over 87 animals that live in 8 unique biomes that you would commonly find in Africa, all of which have their own diverse groupings of wildlife that our guests will want to see. So let the tour begin. To start the safari park, we'll need to build an entrance. On both sides will be ticket stalls, and on top of that is the roof, where we can then add the safari sign. Right in the middle will be the main gate, and now if we get our employees into place, guests can buy their park passes, and over here on this side they can collect their maps. Now that the entrance is complete, we can place it down in the park, officially starting the safari. So now if we have our guests drive through the main gate, they can head into our first biome, the African savanna, beginning with a layer of coarse grass covering the entire plain. On top of that, we'll have trails of dirt that the cars can use to navigate the biome. The African savanna is very recognizable because of its tall grass, so we'll need to add some in, along with several more patches spread around the entire area. So far this is looking great, and with the plants, this actually makes for the perfect spot for the zebra, since they enjoy grazing on the overgrown plants. You'll also find an ostrich among the shrubs, and with its long neck it can easily scan for predators. For example, this pride of lions, consisting of one male, a small cub, and a female. And since most guests will want to see them, I'll add in this sign that helps safari goers spot them. Just don't get too close. The African savanna is also home to smaller animals like termites that live in these spiky mounds, so let's build one over here. And like you'd expect, it's crawling with ants. Some of the biggest animals you'd expect to see are elephants and giraffes. In real life, they prefer eating leaves that are located high up, so I went ahead and threw together a savanna tree that I ended up making several versions of that we can spread around, meaning we can now add in this adult elephant with massive tusks. This would be the animal I'd like to see most on a real safari, so I'll add in another sign to make it easier to locate. And over here by this tree is a pair of giraffes enjoying the tasty leaves. The savanna biome is now complete, making for a great first stop on the safari, thanks in large part to the amazing selection of animals living here. Before we move on, let's get it placed down behind the main entrance, bringing our animal total up to 11, but make sure to stay tuned since we still have 76 more animals and 7 more biomes to add. The next one being the bushveld, which has a dense cluster of trees and shrubs, and they are most commonly found in South Africa, Namibia, and even Zimbabwe. This one will have 5 different species, and so our guests can find them. Let's get started. First up will be 3 patches of dirt, and with those added in, we can go ahead and make the bushes, which use a mix of stem and leaves. But we'll need more than one, so we should go ahead and get more of them spread around the entire forest. And actually, now we can go ahead and add in the first animal, a pair of impala that are snacking on some berries located in the bushes. But to actually make this a more accurate woodland, we'll need trees. Most of them are the same savanna trees from before since the biome will need to connect to it. In real life, these forests often contain many dead trees. They look just like the living ones, only without any leaves. Since leopards enjoy staying up high in the trees, we can add one in here, along with its marker down below. The dead trees are also a preferred habitat for honeybees, who usually have several hives spread around in them. And to protect them, plenty of bees swarming around. And so no one ends up getting stung, we'll need to add a warning sign to avoid this area. But that actually doesn't apply to the honey badger, a very tough animal that is known to enjoy fresh honey. And since LEGO hasn't made one yet, this skunk is actually a pretty good placeholder. They are similar size and color. And since honey badgers are immune to stings, they can walk right up and treat themselves to plenty of fresh honey. The largest animal in the African bushveld are elephants, who prefer to raise their young here compared to the harsh savanna where we saw the fully grown buck. And since the biome is so dense, the safari car might struggle to get through, so we recommend using this disguise that allows you to get really close to the animals. Alright, the bushveld is now complete and home to 18 creatures, and we can go ahead and slide it right into place next to the savanna. And already after just 2 biomes, this is becoming quite a large park. Now we will move on to a more niche biome, the coastal mangrove, which you'll find along the coastal regions of East Africa, and it's home to quite a unique group of animals, so let's expand the safari to this biome. Since the mangrove is an aquatic biome, we'll start with a lot of water, and then on top of that we can add in several sections of land that form little islands. And then we can have the tide come in and flood this entire biome. And well, it's starting to look like a swamp, but it would really help if we added in some mangrove trees, which have a ton of roots that support plenty of branches above. And inside of them it's common to find crab-eating monkeys that will drop down to grab some dinner. Next, we can go ahead and add in several more mangrove trees that will cover the entire swamp, which are home to even more monkeys, which I'm sure guests will want to see, so let's mark their spot. The swamp is also inhabited by some birds, and even some lizards climbing up the roots. In the shallow water running along the shore will be 2 flamingos, and a sign so guests can find them. I don't know why they would need it since they're giant pink birds, but anyways, over on this side will be an African manatee that sometimes swim over here for calm feeding sessions. Now let's have the safari car catch up so the guests can enjoy the finished coastal mangrove biome. It's definitely one of the more unique areas in the safari, which we should go ahead and connect it with. The next biome will need to go right in between the savanna and the mangrove to make these front biomes connect properly, and the floodplains would work really well, since they are mostly rivers and mud, but they would still have a close proximity to the savanna, but also mix in some aquatic elements you'd find in the swamp. To start, we'll need the base of the river, where we can find a bunch of varying sections of land, some of which will need to be covered in vegetation, and this one over here will even have a dead tree. Alright, this is starting to look like a wetland, but we'll need a lot more water to fill up the river, and actually swimming in it you'll find some African clawless otters, which are the second biggest freshwater otter species, and back in the tree you'll find a nest that belongs to the African fish eagle, that can hunt for fresh fish in the river and then store the leftovers up in its nest. And just like in the mangrove, the floodplains are another good spot to find flamingos, but the most notorious animal you'd expect to find here is the crocodile, that like to lay on the shore and slide into the water when they start getting hungry. And lastly is the hippo, which is a very dangerous and territorial animal, and they tend to have a lot of beef with crocs, hence this caution sign. But I guess so long you stay in the car you'll be okay to look out over the floodplains, which ended up having 10 different animals, and now we can slide it into place, and it does a great job of connecting the other two sections. So far my only concern is that the safari car isn't strong enough to be around some of the more dangerous animals, but that's where today's video sponsor Eufy comes in, because they were kind enough to send over the Eufy E1 printer, which is actually really simple to set up, so I've already been using it to print out several custom design tiles throughout this video, like this giant one for the main entrance, and all of these animal markers spread around each biome. And I even printed out both caution signs. And you can print more than just tiles because the E1 is compatible with over 300 different materials, but now I want to use the printer to upgrade the safari car, and I think having some big metal plates reinforcing the frame would help. So let's grab some parts, since printing them is quite easy. You start by putting them in the printer, which then scans the object, and then using their app you can drag your designs onto the tile, allowing you to perfectly line it up. Alright, that looks good, so let's start printing. Then after a couple minutes your design is ready, and for these tiles I printed them using the E1's 3D tactile printing that gives them a raised effect, making them even more realistic than just a normal print. So let's attach them onto the safari car, which will no longer have any issues getting knocked around by stuff like the hippo. And thanks again to Eufy for sponsoring this video, and keep an eye out for the other custom printed items I'll be including throughout the rest of the video. So far we've already built 4 completely different habitats, but there's still plenty more to explore, like the rainforest, which is next. Starting with a mud path that spans through the entire jungle. As we all know, this biome has a ton of vegetation, so let's get a bunch of plants covering the ground. Alright, that's a great start, but I think we could add more. So I went ahead and made several of these larger ferns that we can then mix in throughout the entire rainforest. In this biome, you would also expect to find lakes and rivers, so over here will be a pond that has a couple of lily pads floating on the surface, making for a nice spot for these frogs to sit. So far we've done a good job recreating the ground, but the most important part is the tree canopy, meaning we should start adding in jungle trees. These are by far the largest I've built so far, and they even have vines hanging down, but they wouldn't be empty. In fact, they would be quite full of life, like this pack of golden monkeys, swinging on different branches throughout the tree. And across the way is another group, but this time it's 4 chimpanzees. And over here in the last tree, some more monkeys. But the rainforest doesn't just have primates, several bird species also live here, like these hornbills, and flying by a couple of parrots. Now the last thing we need to do is place the signs so guests know where to look, and since the car can actually drive down the path, they can get up close to the jungle wildlife. And I really think this jungle is my favorite biome so far, and it can go right into place behind the bushveld, fitting in quite nicely. So yeah, this safari is getting quite large. In real life, on these large reserves, you'd find a lodge where guests can take a break or spend the night, so we'll need one too. The first thing we'll need are 2 of these cabins, and there's plenty of space inside to have a comfortable stay. Back outside we can go ahead and connect these buildings with a gravel path. Along it you'll find a picnic table where guests can enjoy a meal, and to get out of the warm sun there is a tree providing some shade. And there's a bike rack in case anybody wants to cycle around the campsite. Next to one of the cabins is a parking spot for the car, along with a gas pump which the driver can use to refill the car for the next half of the journey. And because it's a luxurious resort, we'll add this giant pool, which the guests can just jump right in. Just don't let any elephants near it, because they've been known to drink up entire pools. Even though the safari goers are here for the animals, this certainly makes for a nice rest stop, especially if we place it down right next to the jungle. The next biome is the desert, which covers between 20 and 40% of the entire African continent, and I'll need to cover 100% of this area with sand. And I guess this is basically a desert, but in real life you would find large dunes. So let's go ahead and add this long one running down the entire side. The desert is also full of dried out bushes and shrubs that we can have in several different spots. I also noticed that sometimes there's trees, so let's get those in here as well. And since they provide shade, it would allow for some more green plants to flourish underneath them. The desert is a pretty barren and harsh environment, but there's actually plenty of wildlife, like this scorpion, or this pack of hyenas, which are supposed to be German shepherds, but I think they look close enough. But anyways, they usually hunt for food in packs and meerkats are on the menu, but thankfully for them they dig these holes that make it nearly impossible to catch them. The largest animal you'll find in this biome are elephants. Herds of them can be found migrating across the desert in search of water and lush forests, similar to the ones we've built before. This biome would be great for spotting animals since there's plenty of room to get out and look around, but I would just watch out for the pack of hyenas, but other than that you should be fine. And now this massive section of desert can go right in the middle of the safari park, adding another 10 animals to our total. The next environment will be the highlands that can be found in the mountains of Ethiopia, Rwanda, and Uganda, offering some animals you wouldn't find anywhere else. Let's begin by adding in a ton of plants since this area is still green and forest-like, but you wouldn't really find any animals at this low of an altitude, so we'll need to start in the mountain, which will be the highest point of the safari. Alright, that's definitely a good size, and at the very top will be a layer of grass, on which we'll be able to add a bunch of smaller plants covering the entire peak. Next, we can also scatter some medium-sized trees at both elevation levels. And finally up top is where you would find a pack of gorillas, and of course a sign to help people spot them. Up here you would also find the vulture, which are actually some of the highest flying birds in the world. And let's get the safari car in here since the guests have been waiting quite a while to see the gorillas. But like this, they can't really see them too well, so I guess they just need to use this rope to climb up the mountain. Alright, the highlands are complete, and I think this really matches the environment you would find wild gorillas in real life. And I definitely think the mountains add a fun challenge for our guests to climb. Also, we can now go ahead and slide this section into place, meaning we have officially completed the African safari experience. In total, we ended up seeing 87 animals spread around 8 completely different biomes, and it turns out that the elephant was the most common, popping up in 4 of them. Let me know in the comments down below whatever animals you would like to see me include in the next safari, and thanks for watching. Also, thanks again to UfiMake for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in getting one of their printers, use the link in my description and use my coupon code bouwerbricks at checkout.